The moon hung low and bruised in the sky, the kind of moon that felt like it was watching, judging, whispering warnings through the branches. And beneath that heavy, breathless glow, a young mother ran for her life. Aria didn't look back. She couldn't. The forest behind her was alive with teeth and hunger, and the night itself felt like it wanted to swallow her whole. Her boots slammed into the wet earth, splashing through mud and broken leaves, each step sending sharp pain up her leg where she'd been cut. But she held on. She had to. Because the small body trembling against her chest, her daughter, Luna, was the only reason she hadn't collapsed already. The wind clawed at her like invisible hands, ripping at her torn cloak, dragging the fabric behind her as though the night wanted to strip her down to fear alone. Lightning cracked open the sky, sharp and white, and in that moment of brutal brightness, she saw them. Shadows, moving, snarling, wrong. Wolves that weren't wolves. Men that weren't men. Rogue shifters with eyes too wild to belong to anything sane. They were gaining. Aria gritted her teeth. Her lungs burned so badly it felt like she'd swallowed fire. Her heartbeat thudded like a warning drum in her ears. Luna whimpered softly, her tiny fingers tangled in her mother's clothing, her voice barely a breath. Mama. That one small word nearly shattered her. Aria's grip tightened. Hold on, baby. I've got you. But she was lying. And she knew she was lying. She didn't have anything under control. She had no plan. No pack. No allies. Nothing but the thin thread of defiance that had kept her alive this long. And the storm wasn't making it easy. Rain hit her face like needles, cold enough to numb, harsh enough to sting. The wind howled between the trees, carrying the scent of blood, her blood. Another flash of lightning. Another glimpse of those glowing eyes behind her. They were close. Too close. A sharp bolt of panic tried to rise in her chest, but something else surged with it, something dangerous, flickering, alive beneath her skin. Heat gathered in her palms, crackling like a spark struggling to become flame. Silver flame. The power she had been born with. The power her old pack had called a curse. The power that had gotten her mother killed. Aria swallowed hard, fighting the instinct to let it loose. She could burn the whole forest down if she wasn't careful. She could burn herself down. She'd done it before, when she was younger, when she didn't know how to control it. The scars along her arms still whispered the memory of that pain. She couldn't risk it. Not with Luna in her arms. But the power didn't care what she wanted. It pulsed again, hotter, brighter, pushing against her skin like it was begging to be freed. Every time she clenched her fists, the air around her shimmered, silver threads drifting like smoke. And each spark came with a sting. A reminder. A warning. Lightning tore the sky apart again. The thunder that followed was so loud it made Luna jump and cry out, her tiny hands clutching her mother tighter. Aria's heart twisted. She bent her head to whisper against Luna's hair, though her breath was ragged, though her voice shook with fear. It's okay. I'm here. I won't let them take you. I won't let them hurt you. Not you. Ahead, the trees finally began to thin. She could see the faint outline of a ridge, maybe even a path. But the hill was steep, the ground slick with rain. One wrong step and she would fall. One hesitation and they would catch her. Behind her, a low growl rippled through the forest like the promise of death. She didn't think. She ran harder. Her legs screamed. Her lungs begged her to stop. But fear has a way of stealing pain's voice, and love has a way of turning impossible things into survival. Aria leaned forward and pushed up the hill, her feet slipping, sliding, catching again. She used the trees to steady herself. Branches whipped her face, leaving cuts she didn't feel. Mud splattered her, cold and heavy, but she didn't pause to wipe it off. Every second mattered. Every breath was a gamble. The rogues burst through the tree line just as she reached the ridge. Their snarls were louder now, vicious and full of intent. They wanted her. They wanted Luna. And Aria knew exactly what they planned to do if they caught them. Her heart twisted into a painful knot. She couldn't die here. Luna couldn't die here. Someone out there, had to know the truth. Someone had to hear their story, even if Aria didn't survive the night. Even if her voice was lost to the storm. A branch snapped behind her. A weight slammed into the ground. Aria's head whipped around just in time to see the closest rogue leap for her, its teeth flashing, its claws cutting through the air. And once again, that power inside her lurched, begging to burn everything. No, she whispered, more to herself than to the flames crawling under her skin. But survival has a voice louder than fear. Aria stumbled backward, barely missing the rogue's snapping jaws, and her foot slipped on the wet ground. The world tilted for a breathless moment. Luna's scream stabbed through the rain. Aria caught herself at the last second, bracing her shoulder against a tree. Another growl. Another flash of lightning. Another heartbeat away from death. Her strength was fading. Her power was rising. And the night was closing in. She blinked rain from her lashes, fighting the trembling in her arms. Fighting the certainty pressing against her ribs. Someone needed to hear this. Someone needed to understand what it meant when a mother ran through a storm with her child pressed against her heart. And as she stumbled forward, voice low and shaking, she breathed the words like a final plea into the darkness. If you're hearing this, don't look away. Not now. Not when everything is falling apart. She swallowed the fear clawing up her throat and forced her voice to steady, even as tears blurred the path ahead. Subscribe to Moonlight Desires, so you never miss the truth hidden behind the shadows. And with that, she ran again, into the storm, into the unknown, into the teeth of fate itself. Because love, when everything else is stripped away, is still enough to make someone fight like hell. The moment Aria reached the ridge, her strength finally buckled. Her foot slid across the slick mud, and she crashed to her knees, twisting her body to protect Luna from the fall. The little girl cried out, the sound sharp and terrified, cutting straight through the roar of the storm. Aria forced herself up again, breath shaking, but it was already too late. The rogue surged forward like a wave of darkness breaking loose from the trees, teeth bared, bodies low, eyes burning with hunger. She backed up until the ridge's edge pressed against her heel. One more step and she would fall with Luna into the drop below. But the beasts ahead showed no hesitation. They lunged. Luna screamed. Aria braced herself, ready to take the hit with her whole body. But something massive dropped from the sky of branches above them. The impact shook the ground. Mud splashed upward. The rogue skidded back with startled snarls. A wolf stood between Aria and the monsters closing in. Not just a wolf. A giant, midnight black creature, broader than any normal shifter, its coat absorbing the moonlight instead of reflecting it. Its presence bent the air, thick and heavy, as though something ancient had just stepped into the world. Lightning flashed, catching the green in its eyes, bright, piercing, unbearably familiar. The rogues hesitated, hackles raised. The black wolf did not. It launched forward with bone-breaking force. One rogue went flying. Another was pinned under a massive paw, crushed against the mud. Teeth tore through fur and flesh. The forest echoed with snarls and impacts as the wolf fought with the precision of someone who had killed 1,000 times and learned to regret every one of them. Aria clutched Luna tighter. Her heart hammered not from fear, but from recognition she didn't want to feel. When the last rogue hit the ground, whimpering and beaten, the wolf stepped back. Its sights rose and fell in heavy breaths, steam rising from its body in the cold rain. And then, slowly, it turned to face her. The air changed. Bones shifted under black fur with a series of low, sickening cracks. The body twisted, reshaping itself. Claws pulled back into fingers. The muzzle shortened into a jaw. Muscles rippled, skin replacing fur in waves, until a man stood where the beast had been. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Bare skin streaked with rain and blood. Power wrapped around him like a second skin, too steady, too dangerous to ignore. Alpha Draven of the Nightfall Pack. He didn't step closer. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, truly looked, like someone seeing a ghost they had spent years trying to forget. Then, in a voice low enough to vibrate through the air between them, he said her name. Aria. The sound of it hit her harder than any chase, any fear, any wound. He spoke it with a kind of familiarity that didn't make sense, slowly, carefully, like it was a name he had memorized in another lifetime and never expected to use again. Aria's stomach clenched. Her mouth went dry. Her body, still trembling from the run, felt suddenly unsteady for an entirely different reason. He stepped once toward her. She flinched. His jaw tightened. But before either of them could speak, Luna lifted her head from Aria's chest. Her small voice wavered, fragile and curious all at once. Alpha, why do your eyes look like mine? The question hung in the storm-soaked air, delicate and lethal. Draven froze. Not just a pause, his entire body locked, breath catching in his throat as if the ground had been ripped from beneath him. His gaze flicked to the child, then back to Aria, searching, demanding answers she wasn't ready to give. The tension between them thickened, alive and pulsing, twisting through the rain. Fear hummed in Aria's chest. Distrust flickered in Draven's eyes. And beneath it all, something deeper, something neither of them dared name, stirred like a heartbeat shared at a distance. For the first time that night, the danger wasn't behind them. It was standing right in front of her. Aria didn't answer the question hanging between them. She couldn't. The storm around her felt easier to face than the storm rising inside her chest. She tightened her hold on Luna, shielding the little girl with her arms as though the truth itself were another predator lurking in the trees. Draven watched her in a silence that felt too heavy to breathe through. His eyes, those unmistakable eyes, searched her face with the sharpness of someone who recognized a wound he had no right to name. The rain softened nothing. It only made everything sharper, clearer, harder to hide. Aria looked away first. But the moment she lowered her gaze, the memories slipped in. Uninvited. Unstoppable. She saw the night of her exile as clearly as if she were back there, standing in the center of the pack circle with every face turned against her. Torches flickered. Accusations filled the air. And she had stood alone, too young, too scared, while the Alpha declared her a danger, a curse, a mistake they should have ended years ago. The silver flame trembling in her palms that night had betrayed her. It had glowed when she begged it not to, revealing the power they feared. The crowd had recoiled. Her mother had stepped in front of her then, shielding her the same way Aria now shielded Luna. A fierce, desperate gesture. It was the last moment they had together before the attack, before claws ripped open the night and Aria watched her mother fall under a rogue's jaws, giving her daughter the handful of seconds she needed to escape. She could still hear her mother's voice. Run. Don't look back. Live. But living hadn't felt like living. Not when every step afterward was taken in hiding. Not when the life growing inside her belly became another secret she couldn't protect. A forbidden pregnancy. A child conceived in fear and hope tangled together. A child she loved more fiercely than she ever thought she could love anything. A child the world would never accept if they knew who the father was. Her throat closed, the truth clawing at her like it wanted to break free. If they learn who Luna's father is, they'll kill us both. The thought had never left her. It lived in her the way a heartbeat does, constant, unavoidable, merciless. Aria inhaled shakily, dragging herself back to the present. But the past clung to her skin like wet ash, heavy and impossible to brush off. She kept her eyes on the ground, hoping Draven wouldn't see the panic creeping into her expression. He had always been too good at reading people. Too good at reading her, even when she wished he couldn't. A small hand gripped her leg. Luna pressed herself closer, eyes fixed on Draven with quiet intensity. Not fear. Not confusion. Something warmer, something faintly familiar, as if she recognized something in him she'd never seen anywhere else. The resemblance was subtle but undeniable. The shape of their eyes. The strange, calm alertness. The slight glow beneath rage or fear. Draven noticed it too. His jaw flexed. His shoulders tightened. His gaze shifted between Aria and the child, searching for answers she wasn't giving. The alpha in him wanted truth. The man in him wanted something else, understanding, maybe. Or an explanation he was afraid to hear. Aria forced her voice out, soft and strained. "Don't look at her like that." He didn't answer, but the silence burned with everything neither of them said. Draven took a single step closer. Not threatening, just inevitable. The kind of step someone takes when they've already made up their mind to approach, whether they should or not. The air between them thickened. Aria stepped back. His eyes narrowed, troubled by the retreat. He wasn't just sensing fear. He was sensing protection. Secrets. Lies. And Aria hated that he could tell. Hated the way his presence pushed old truths toward the surface like wounds reopening. He spoke, voice low. "There's something you're not telling me." There were 1,000 things. And none she could say without tearing her world apart. Luna's hand tightened around her leg again, and Aria rested her palm over her daughter's head, grounding herself in that small, trembling warmth. She didn't answer him. But her silence told him everything he needed to know. The forest held its breath as Draven stepped deeper into the clearing, guiding Aria and Luna toward a place no outsider should have ever seen. His movements were slow now, purposeful, reverent. As if he feared the ground itself might shift beneath him. As if this moment had stalked him long before he ever found Aria bleeding in the rain. Moonlight slid through the branches in thin, trembling beams, illuminating the hidden shrine as though the night itself wanted the truth exposed. Aria stopped the moment the stones came into view. Old. Older than any pack. Older than recorded memory. Even the air felt ancient, thick with dustless time, humming with a presence she could feel across her skin. Symbols carved into the monoliths pulsed faintly, like heartbeats waiting to sync with hers. Her breath broke. "This place, what is it?" Draven didn't face her. Couldn't. His shoulders were too tight, the muscles locked as if bracing for a storm he'd spent years pretending didn't exist. His voice, when it finally came, was low, almost afraid. "Watch." He wasn't commanding her. He was warning her. Because the moment Aria stepped forward, every symbol on every stone, every mark she had no name for, flared to life with a silver glow so bright it washed the world white for a heartbeat. The ground throbbed beneath her bare feet. The air shifted, warm then cold then electric, pulling at something deep inside her chest. Her hands began to shake. Not from fear, but recognition. Luna wriggled out from behind her cloak before Aria could stop her, small feet padding with unsteady courage toward the altar. "Mama, look," she whispered, eyes wide, pupils shimmering like molten moonstone. "It feels warm." "Luna, wait." But the girl's fingers were already pressed to the carved crescent at the center of the shrine. The light didn't simply brighten. It exploded. A shockwave of silver fire rippled outward, silent, terrifyingly soft, passing through them like a memory returning home. Aria stumbled back, choking on air that suddenly felt too full of meaning. Draven caught her instinctively, but even his hands trembled. Because the visions didn't appear in the sky. They appeared right in front of them. A phantom silhouette, a woman who looked exactly like Aria, only older, crowned in silver flame, lifted her hands as if offering a blessing to the child in her belly. Luna gasped, mesmerized. Another flash, a newborn cradled in blazing light. A child of fire. Power rolling off tiny fingers like the breath of a rising star. Then, another vision. A broken alpha. Kneeling alone in a ruined hall, fists bleeding against stone, clutching a woman's photograph so tightly it tore. His grief thick enough to taste in the air. Draven flinched as if struck. Aria felt him freeze behind her, the sharp, involuntary intake of breath, the way his pulse stuttered beneath his skin. His eyes were fixed on the broken alpha's image like he'd been waiting for, or running from, that vision all his life. When he finally whispered, it wasn't to Aria. It wasn't even to himself. It was to fate. The mother of fire, his voice cracked, raw and disbelieving. She will birth the alpha who unites or ends us all. Aria jerked away from him, shaking her head. The prophecy tasted poisonous on her tongue, a destiny she had spent every second of the last 4 years refusing to acknowledge. No. No, that's not me. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm just trying to keep my daughter alive. But the stones responded before Draven could. Every marking brightened, casting her in a halo of silver light so pure it made her look otherworldly, untouchable, unstoppable, inevitable. Her denial faltered. Because deep inside her, under the fear, under the scars, under the guilt of every loss she'd ever endured, the silver flame stirred like it had been waiting for this moment to breathe. Draven took a single step closer. Only one. But it was enough that she could feel the heat rolling off him, fear, rage, longing, confusion twisting together. You can deny your past, he said, voice low, rough, almost tender against his will. But you can't deny this. Luna turned back to them, eyes glowing with the same silver pulse as the shrine. Mama, she whispered, she looks like you. Aria's knees nearly buckled. Not from destiny. Not from prophecy. But from the weight of being seen, truly seen, by the one person she'd sworn to protect from every truth that now threatened to swallow them whole. And when Draven closed the distance between them, the air tightened with something thick and dangerous, fear, yes, but also recognition. Something unnamed. Something older than any prophecy. Something that made the shrine's flames surge higher. Something that suggested fate wasn't done with them. Not even close. The night didn't stay still for long. The moment the shrine dimmed to its usual pulse, the forest erupted with footsteps, fast, aggressive, too many to count. Draven stiffened, instinct sharpening like a blade drawn in the dark. Aria felt the shift in him before she heard the growls closing in. Warriors burst into the clearing, surrounding them in a tight circle. Their eyes were hard, their bodies tense, the air thick with the scent of distress. Every one of them had shifted partially, fangs lengthened, claws half-formed, wolves straining beneath their skin. They hadn't come in peace. The first warrior to step forward pointed straight at Aria, voice dripping contempt. Alpha, you're being manipulated. She's using witchcraft. Aria's breath stilled. The old slur cut sharper than any blade. Draven moved to block the accusation, but the circle tightened, several warriors edging closer, hackles rising. Another voice snapped from the left, look at the child. Her eyes glow like your wolf. What has she done? Luna flinched, burying herself in Aria's cloak, trembling so hard Aria could feel it through her bones. She wrapped an arm around her daughter, pressing Luna close, shielding her from their hunger, because the hatred in those eyes wasn't a threat. It was a promise. More warriors stormed into the clearing, higher rank, older, radiating authority. The Pact Council. Their expressions were carved from stone, fury barely contained. One counselor jabbed a staff into the ground, voice echoing with condemnation. Why is a rogue witch in our sacred lands? The word witch landed like a strike to the gut. Aria tasted metal. Not blood, shame. Old shame. Buried deep, clawing its way back into her throat. Draven's jaw clenched. She's not. You brought corruption into our shrine, another counselor thundered. Under the blood moon? Are you mad? The accusation hit more than Draven, it ignited the clearing. Before he could speak, dissenting warriors lunged at loyal ones. Claws clashed, bodies slammed into stone, the shrine's light shaking beneath the sudden violence. The ground churned with snarls and curses. Wolves fought wolves, loyalty fracturing in real time. Aria backed away, Luna pressed to her chest, but the chaos closed in like a tightening noose. A warrior broke from the fray, teeth bared, eyes locked on Luna. The child, get the child. Aria barely had time to react. Luna screamed, "Ara!" terrified sound that sliced through the clearing. Something inside Aria snapped. Not like a string. Like a dam. Heat tore through her hands, through her veins, through the air itself. Her power, unstable, unwanted, burst outward in a wave of silver fire. It struck the ground with a force that sent several warriors flying. The earth sizzled beneath her feet, burning in jagged patterns, flames licking upward before collapsing into sparks. The clearing froze. Every pair of eyes locked on her. Including Draven's. His expression wasn't fear. It wasn't awe. It was something harder to bear, recognition. The council stepped forward as the smoke thinned, their voices turning lethal. Alpha, their leader spat, choose your people, or the traitor. The word traitor cut colder than the rain had hours ago. Draven didn't answer. Not immediately. That hesitation, small, fragile, devastating, was enough. Aria saw it. Felt it. And her heart broke in a way no flame could mend. Draven didn't speak as he led them away from the ruined clearing, away from the accusing eyes and raised claws. His steps were steady, but the tension rolling off him was sharp enough to carve through rock. Aria followed because she had no choice. Luna's small fingers were trembling in hers, and the forest was no longer safe. Not with the pack divided. Not with her power exposed. They reached a narrow opening hidden behind a curtain of moss. Draven pushed it aside, revealing a cavern carved by time and water. The air was cool, humming quietly with the distant drip of underground streams. Firelight flickered from a torch Draven lit, casting shadows that made everything feel closer, more intimate, harder to hide from. Aria lowered Luna onto a blanket he'd left there long ago. Her hands were gentle as she checked the girl's arms, brushing over a forming bruise. Luna winced but didn't complain, too exhausted to speak, too shaken to cry. Draven watched from a few steps away, guilt written in every tight line of his body. He kept his distance, as though afraid he'd break something delicate just by breathing too close. Aria didn't look up. She's just a child, she whispered, voice frayed at the edges. They were going to take her. Draven's breath faltered. I know. But the words weren't enough, not tonight, not after everything. Aria kept tending to Luna, smoothing her hair, whispering soft shushing sounds. It wasn't until Luna finally drifted into uneasy sleep that Aria stood and faced him. The fire crackled between them, lighting the planes of his face, shadows under his eyes, tension along his jaw, guilt digging deep. Draven spoke first. His voice was low, but it shook. I never meant for any of that to happen. Aria held herself still. But it did. He flinched, just barely. Enough to show the fracture under the alpha. Silence stretched, heavy. Then Draven let out a breath that sounded like surrender. I lost someone, he said quietly. Years ago. Aria blinked, caught off guard. My mate. The words were carved from old wounds. I couldn't save her. And when she died, everything I was, shattered. The alpha. The man. All of it. The fire flickered, catching the sheen in his eyes before he blinked it away. I thought I'd never feel anything again, he murmured. Not anger. Not hope. Not anything. Aria's chest tightened, unwillingly. Softly. Dangerous. She swallowed. I ran from my pack, she said, voice almost too quiet to hear. When they found out I was pregnant, they called me a curse. A threat. I knew they'd take the baby. I didn't wait for them to decide how. Draven lifted his gaze, something breaking open inside him. I've never told Luna who her father is, Aria continued. Because knowing would put her in danger. Knowing would destroy her future. A long beat passed. Then their hands brushed. Not by accident. Warm skin against warm skin, soft, aching, tentative. Aria didn't pull away at first. The touch was small, but the meaning behind it was enormous. Draven's fingers curled gently, asking without words. Their breath synced. Their foreheads nearly touched. Heat rose, slow, trembling, magnetic. They leaned in. Almost. Almost tasting something forbidden, fragile, painfully needed. But Aria pulled back. Too fast. Too sharp. I can't break again, she whispered, voice cracking. I can't survive shattering twice. Draven stepped closer, but he didn't touch her. His voice was soft, raw, stripped of everything but truth. I see you, he said. All of you. The fire. The fear. The strength you don't believe you have. His eyes didn't waver. No matter what they say, he whispered, I see you. And for the first time in years, Aria felt something shift inside her, something dangerous. Something like hope. The cavern's fragile peace shattered the moment the first boot struck stone. Torches flared. Growls filled the air. The council poured into the narrow space like a flood of judgment, armored in authority and old fear. Their eyes were sharp, too sharp, already certain of their verdict before a single word was spoken. Aria instinctively pushed Luna behind her. Draven stepped forward, but the council didn't spare him a glance of respect. Their leader, Elder Maros, lifted a rolled parchment, and then, slowly, deliberately, revealed what lay inside. A photograph. Old. Worn. Kept long enough for the edges to soften. And unmistakably of Aria. The council tossed it onto the ground, letting the firelight illuminate her younger face, eyes softer than, smile unburdened, hair brushed by sunlight instead of fear. Luna blinked. Stepped forward. Reached for the picture with tiny fingers. Then she lifted her gaze to Draven. Alpha, she whispered, innocent, curious, unguarded. Why is my mother's photo in your palace? Time didn't just pause, it froze solid, cracking the breath out of the cavern. Draven's jaw clenched. His eyes flashed, pain, recognition, something deeper he hadn't dared name. The council erupted in gasps, in snarls, in vicious whispers sharpened into knives. There. Proof. He kept her picture, why? For what reason? He has been bewitched. He was hers long before tonight. She intended this. They circled the fire like wolves ready to rend flesh from bone. Every accusation landed like a blow. She seduced you when she first came of age. She used her flame to bind you. She birthed this child to claim your throne. Aria staggered back, breath punched from her lungs. Each word struck with terrifying accuracy, because they all suspected the same forbidden truth she had spent years running from. Draven stepped toward her. Aria. But he stopped. Just one heartbeat. Just one flicker of hesitation. It was enough. Aria felt it like a blade driven straight through the ribs, deep enough to crack bone. Luna clung to her leg, looking back and forth between them, confused by the tension slicing open the air. The council pressed harder. Alpha, choose now. Your people, or the woman who has lied since the moment she drew breath. Draven inhaled sharply. He should have denied them instantly. He should have stood between her and the world. He didn't. And the absence of his voice was louder than any roar. Aria's vision blurred, not with weakness, but with fury. With heartbreak. With a truth she'd refused to face, she had trusted him. Even after everything. Even after the past. Even after the fear. She had let herself hope. And hope was a cruel thing. Before anyone could reach for her, Aria scooped Luna into her arms. Silver flickered, first a spark, then a trembling pulse, then a violent surge. It erupted from her palms in a burst of raw, unstable power. The cavern walls shook. Stone cracked. Flames of molten silver raced across the floor like living wildfire. Warriors stumbled back, shielding their faces. The council held warnings. Draven reached out. Aria, wait. But she didn't. Couldn't. Not after seeing the doubt in his eyes. Not after hearing her daughter question the man who should have protected them both. She turned, every muscle burning, every heartbeat a command. Run. The cavern exploded behind her as she fled into the night, Luna clutched tight, silver fire lighting the forest in her wake. And Draven's voice, broken, furious, desperate, echoed after her, swallowed by the storm she unleashed. Nightfall territory burned. Not with fire, but with terror. Rogue alphas poured through the trees like a plague of shadows, ripping through the borders, tearing down wards, slaughtering any warrior who dared stand in their path. Their howls twisted the air, thick with dark magic, thick with the hunger for power long denied. And at the center of the chaos stood the ritual site, stones trembling, runes pulsing, the earth itself cracking beneath the weight of something ancient waking too soon. Luna was there. Dragged by a rogue who moved too fast for anyone to stop, her small body thrashing, her screams cutting through the storm. Draven fought like a beast possessed, shifting, tearing, bleeding, but he could not reach her in time. Every step forward was blocked by another enemy, another claw, another killing strike meant for him. The council shouted orders. Warriors fell. Trees collapsed. And then, the world shifted. The wind sucked inward, sharp and sudden, like the forest itself inhaled. Silver light streaked across the sky. A roar, not wolf, not human, not anything that had been heard in generations, shook the earth down to its roots. Aria returned. But she was not the Aria who fled the cavern, raw and shaking, wounded by betrayal. She walked out of the storm like a rising dawn, silver flame wrapping her body, her hair glowing like strands of lightning, her eyes burning with the memories of every ancestor who had ever carried the flame before her. The forest bowed. Branches lowered as if in reverence. Wolves whimpered and backed away. Even the moon brightened, climbing higher as though the night itself wanted to see her more clearly. The rogue holding Luna froze, caught between fear and disbelief. Aria lifted her hand. The flame did not flicker, it obeyed. With a single pulse of light, it knocked the rogue into the air, sending Luna tumbling safely into the arms of a stunned warrior. The moment her child was free, Aria stepped forward, flames sliding around her like wings. And then he appeared. From the fractured stones of the ritual site, from the black smoke pooling between the runes, a figure rose. Tall. Cold. Eyes like dying stars. The Shadow Alpha. The monster who had murdered her mother. The butcher who had hunted her as a child. The tyrant who had sworn her bloodline would die with her. His voice slithered through the night. You should have stayed hidden, little flame. Aria didn't flinch. You should have stayed dead. The ground cracked beneath her feet. Her flame surged, not wild anymore, not destructive, but controlled. Channeled. Claimed. It pulsed through the soil, igniting ancient symbols buried beneath centuries of dust. Stones rose, spinning around her. The earth trembled as though awakening to her call. The Shadow Alpha lunged, but his claws met a wall of silver fire so hot the air screamed. Aria strode forward, her power amplifying with every heartbeat. The forest shook with each step, lightning streaking the edges of the storm above. Wolves scattered. Rogues cried out. The very sky bent toward her. The Shadow Alpha snarled, summoning darkness, ripping open the ground, but Aria answered with a roar of pure flame that blasted the shadows apart. The world quaked. Runes ignited across the battlefield, flaring to life as if recognizing their rightful heir. And then, Draven reached her side. Blood dripping. Breath ragged. Eyes blazing. Not to stop her. Not to question her. But to stand with her. Side by side. Equals. He shifted mid-stride, his wolf slamming into a rogue alpha, tearing through the ranks with renewed fury. Aria's flames followed his strikes, forging paths, clearing enemies, burning lies to ash. For the first time in her life, she was not alone in the fight. For the first time, her power was not a curse. It was an inheritance. A birthright. And with Draven beside her, the battlefield became something unstoppable, steel and flame, fang and fury, destiny and defiance intertwined. And the Shadow Alpha. The predator who swore she would never rise finally understood his mistake. The battle ended not with a roar, but with a hush, a trembling silence that fell over the forest like ash settling after fire. Smoke curled from the charred earth, weaving between broken stones and shattered trees. The air smelled of wet earth, burnt wood, and the lingering heat of power unleashed. Aria stood in the center of it all. Her chest heaved, sweat and rain streaking her dirt-streaked face. Silver light still clung to her skin in faint pulses, flickering like a heartbeat. Her hands shook, trembling from exertion, fear, and something she couldn't name. Victory had come, but the cost, oh, the cost, was written into the silence around her. Luna clung to her leg, small arms wrapped tightly, forehead pressed to Aria's thigh. Her child's breaths were quick, uneven, still tasting of fear and awe. Aria's hands tightened around her daughter, grounding herself in the only constant she had left, the small, fragile life she had sworn to protect above all else. Draven approached slowly, his own body battered and bloodied, but his eyes were fixed on her. There was something raw in that gaze, something unguarded, as if he could see everything she'd tried to hide, not just the fire, but the woman beneath it. His hand reached out, trembling, hesitant, offering connection, offering trust, offering himself. But Aria stepped back. Not away from him, but from the vulnerability his touch promised. Her chest tightened. She could feel her power pulsing beneath the skin, still unstable, still dangerous, still, too much. And she couldn't risk giving even a fraction of herself to anyone, not yet. Not after betrayal. Not after the world had tried to claim her daughter, not after the prophecy that weighed on her every step. The silence deepened, wrapping around them like a living thing. The forest had no wind, no movement, only the faint crackle of lingering silver embers and the soft whimper of distant wolves. Every heartbeat sounded louder than it should, echoing in Aria's ears like a question she could not answer. And in that quiet, the truth demanded to be asked, soft, cruel, intimate. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Is she a savior, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? The question hung between them, threading through smoke and shadow, weaving into the very bones of the clearing. It was not just for the warriors, not just for Draven, not just for the rogues scattered in the distance, it was for anyone who had ever faced power they could not understand, anyone who had ever loved someone too wild to control, anyone who had ever felt the weight of destiny press against their chest until it almost broke them. Aria looked down at Luna, at the child who had survived fire and darkness, at the small pulse of life that made her believe she could endure anything. She inhaled, letting the silver glow fade into a soft shimmer, letting herself feel the fragile quiet, the first moment of stillness she had known in years. And in that hush, the narrator's voice lingers, intimate, soft, impossible to ignore. If this story touched something deep inside you, subscribe to Moonlight Desires, where every tale burns brighter than the moon. Because here, the shadows are not just dark, they are alive. And the fire? The fire never dies. Aria moved through the forest, each step measured, each breath shallow but steady. Luna clutched her hand, still trembling, still small against the weight of what had just passed. The silver glow of Aria's power had faded to a faint pulse beneath her skin, like a heartbeat that refused to quiet, reminding her of every loss, every betrayal, every secret she carried. The forest was silent, or so it seemed. But the ground beneath them shivered with subtle tremors, small at first, barely perceptible, like the pulse of the earth itself matching the rhythm of her racing heart. Branches quivered, leaves rustled, and the shadows seemed to lean closer, as if the night were aware of something coming, something yet unseen. Aria glanced at Luna, her chest tightening at the fragile curve of her daughter's jaw, the bright, curious eyes that had already seen too much for one lifetime. She drew her closer, whispering reassurances she barely believed herself. Every step forward was a promise she had to keep, not just to survive, but to protect the bloodline she had fought so desperately to preserve. And then, from the darkness deeper in the woods, a movement. Slow. Calculated. Watching. A figure draped in shadows, its face hidden beneath a hood, half seen through the trembling leaves. It did not move forward. It did not speak. It simply observed, eyes glinting in the faint silver light like embers. Aria didn't notice it yet, too focused on the path ahead, too intent on guiding Luna to safety, too consumed by the echoes of fire and blood that still clung to her muscles. But the forest whispered around them, carrying something more than wind. A voice, low and certain, almost a murmur beneath the tremor of the trees. She is not the only one born of flame. The words floated like smoke, almost lost to the night, almost dismissed as a trick of the wind, but not quite. The tremor under their feet deepened, sharper, more insistent, as though the earth itself wanted to announce the truth. Aria stopped for a heartbeat, chest heaving, ears straining. The silver pulse beneath her skin responded instinctively, not in alarm but in recognition, as though it understood the danger before she did. Luna pressed closer, tiny hands gripping her mother's cloak, whispering, "Mama, what is it?" Aria forced a calm she did not feel. "Nothing, just keep moving." But the tremor spread, rippling through the forest like a warning. And from the darkness, the cloaked figure moved again, slowly, deliberately, disappearing among the trees as if it had never been, leaving only the echo of those final words lingering in the air. "The true Alpha has not risen, yet." The forest shivered one last time, then settled, leaving only the soft hiss of leaves in the night, the distant call of a lone wolf, and the quiet, impossible certainty that this story, Aria's story, Luna's, Draven's, the legacy of flame, was far from over. And as they disappeared into the shadows, the night held its breath, waiting. Waiting for the flames to awaken again. Waiting for the next battle. Waiting for the truth to claim its place in a world that had already trembled once, and would tremble again. The screen of the mind fades to black, leaving only that whispered warning lingering in the ears of those who dare to listen, leaving hearts pounding, questions unanswered, and the unmistakable pull of a destiny that refuses to be denied.